Seated. Good evening, councillors, and welcome to this evening's extraordinary council meeting. Before we commence this evening's business, can I please remind all members of the following. Please can all mobile phones be kept on silent or turn them off during the meeting where possible. Please remain focused on the topic being discussed. Please do not repeat points which have already been made. Please show respect to other councillors and avoid interrupting other councillors, and to respect the position of the Lord Mayor. Please indicate by a clear show of hands if you wish to speak, and I will then call you as appropriate. Please can members rise on any point of order which relates to an alleged breach of a standing order or statutory provision, and specify which standing order or statutory provision they consider has been broken. Any personal explanation by a member must be confined to some part of a former speech which appears to have been misunderstood in the debate. The first item on the agenda is agenda item 1, declarations of interest. If any members have any disclosable pecuniary interest that relates to business on the agenda and have not already been included in the register of interest, to declare them before any discussion takes place on the item. Agenda item 2, exclusion of press and public. I can confirm that there are no part 2 items on the agenda. So we move on to agenda item 3, and I invite the leader, Councillor Bialik, to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will read the recommendations because we are online and a lot of people won't see it. 2.1 notes the government response in Appendix 2 to Exeter's interim submission. 2.2, Council agrees the proposed geography for the Exeter City Council local government reorganisation proposal for Devon to enable officers to undertake a programme of public and stakeholder engagement to assist in building the detailed proposal to bring forward to the Council for approval. The outcome of the engagement with residents and stakeholders will be shared with members. 2.3. Delegates authority to the Chief Executive in conjunction with the leader to further develop the proposal, undertake the proposed engagement and prepare the final proposal for agreement prior to the submission to government, and notes that any request for any further budget required to complete the final proposal would be brought back to Council for approval. So, Lord Mayor, in moving those recommendations, let me begin by saying plainly, everything in the world of councils is about to change. We're here because we have an opportunity to redraw the map of local government in Devon. Members will know that this council has long held the ambition to be a unitary council for the benefit of the city and the whole county. When we last debated the issue, council confirmed that ambition. So the question before us isn't if we respond, it's how we respond. And I believe, and genuinely so, that Exeter has the responsibility to lead, not dominate, not dictate, but lead with clarity, humility, and with deep respect for the communities around us. The Chief Executive will take us through the detail, but I wanted to visit some points first. The proposal before us sets out a clear direction of 3 unitary councils. It's a model that recognises distinct identities and needs of urban and rural communities and aligns geography, population and economic potential with financial sustainability. It rightly places Exeter and Plymouth where they belong, as engines of growth for the whole county. Exeter's strengths in housing, innovation, education, climate science and transport connectivity makes it a natural hub for a new urban authority. This is a rare opportunity to reshape public services, to improve outcomes, tackle inequalities and deliver better value for money. And by working with places that already have a strong tie to Exeter, we can build something that accelerates growth and strengthens communities, not just here, but across all of Devon. I want to thank the Chief Executive and the officers for their work that has gone into this report. It's substantial, evidence-based, and rooted in a geography that makes sense for Devon's future. To be clear, we are not approving a final blueprint tonight. What we're doing, if we agree, is allowing officers to do the detailed financial assessment and begin the formal engagement with the public and stakeholders, to test the thinking, to gather the evidence, and more importantly, to listen. We're also delegating authority to the Chief Executive, working closely with myself to check the full proposal that includes financial modelling, service design, and conversations with other councils. I want to assure members that officers will be briefing members as the case develops. If more budget is required to do this properly, then that decision will come back to members. Now, I've heard and even read a few online criticisms from some quarters that this is Exeter just trying to expand or a power grab. Honestly, I do understand it, and people are wary. They've seen too many decisions without them, not for them. But that's not what this is. That's not what we're doing. We're not asking anyone to sign up to our proposal at this stage. We're asking them to talk to us, to challenge us, to tell us what works, and in particular, what doesn't. Because if this new council is going to serve the people well, it has to be built with them, not just around them. In a rush to get a soundbite out, some early critics have missed the point entirely. This proposed geography isn't about Exeter, it's about all of Devon. It's about how this county sets itself up for decades to come. We can't afford to let party politics get in the way of a once-in-a-lifetime generation opportunity to shape the future that delivers growth, fairness, and success for all our communities. We've got a tight window. The government timetable is ambitious, but we always describe ourselves as an ambitious council. And yes, the time frame limits what we can do, but doesn't stop us from doing it properly. If members agree tonight, we'll begin a 6-week programme of public, resident and stakeholder engagement. That includes webinars, in-person meetings and direct outreach to every parish and town council within the proposed geography. We'll be transparent about our thinking. We'll share the proposed boundaries, the rationale, the evidence, and we'll ask people what they think, what worries them, what excites them, and what they need from a future council. We're already working closely with Plymouth Council on their proposal, which, as I said earlier, recognises their position as an economic powerhouse in the county. We also recognise Torby's unique role in the region and are committed to working collaboratively to explore how its priorities and proposals can be reflected in any final submission. We're genuinely open to collaborating with any other council that wants to be part of the conversation. And as the Chief Executive will say in her speech, we're open to making changes on our proposal based on what communities and government are telling us. That's why we're engaging, to listen, to learn, and to adjust, so we end up with the strongest possible plan for Devon. In closing, Lord Mayor, back in March, we gave unanimous support to our officers to begin this work. That unity matters to me and many others. It sends a clear message that Exeter is serious about leading this process with integrity and transparency. I remember one campaign during many campaigns that I've been involved in, as many of us around this room, cold night, wet nights, and sometimes you wonder why you're out at all. I've knocked on doors in Exeter and other places in Exeter, spoken to people, and what resonated with me was a particular woman in her early 70s. She lived alone, had mobility issues, and relied on a patchwork of services from different councils. She told me in no uncertain terms, I don't care who runs what, I just want someone to know I exist. That has stuck with me. We will know that they exist, and we will listen to them. Because behind all the talk about structures and submissions and strategy documents, that's what this is really about, making sure people feel seen, they matter, and that the system works for them, not the other way around. So tonight, Lord Mayor, I'm asking, hopefully, for unanimous support for the motion, not because it's perfect, not because every detail is nailed down, because it moves us forward. It lets the officers do their work. It lets us start the conversations that matter. It lets us shape something better for all of Devon. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ballock. Is there a seconder for those recommendations?
Seconded.
I'll now invite the Chief Executive to present the report.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and good evening, members. The report before members is about designing a unitary authority that reflects the strength of our county, as the leader has said, responds to the needs of our communities and improves services across Devon. Before addressing the report in detail, I'd like to remind members of the context in which the report is set. The government has made its direction clear. The English Devolution White Paper signalled the end of the current two-tier system of local government. For Devon, that means that all 11 councils will be abolished by 2028. The City Council's responsibility is to propose to government what a new single tier of local government should look like, not just in the interest of the residents of Exeter, but for the whole county. This presents, as we've heard, an opportunity to reshape services, strengthen identity, and deliver better economic growth for all communities in Devon. The report before members this evening does not set out the full case for the Council's proposal for local government reorganisation. Its focus is to confirm the proposed geography that will underpin our submission. Members' decision tonight will mean that officers can begin developing the full proposal, including a detailed financial assessment. The final submission must make the case not only for a council to serve Devon and the surrounding area, but also for councils to administer the rest of Devon. Agreeing the geography this evening allows the council to also begin our planned programme of public and stakeholder engagement over the next 6 weeks. The outcome of that engagement will be shared with members and used to shape our final submission due to government by the 28th of November. Lord Mayor, the proposed geography reflects the natural connections our communities have in Devon, the places where people live, work, study, and access services. It is a geography that's been shaped by evidence, connection, and the lived reality of how people interact with Exeter and its surrounding parishes. Our proposal contends that services should be within a closer travelling distance, more accessible for users, and closer to local providers. It includes the growth area to the east of the city and many areas where people travel to Exeter for employment, education, or cultural activity. Local government reorganisation for Devon must reflect the unique characteristics of Exeter and Plymouth as the main drivers of growth for the whole county, whilst also recognising the shared identity and needs of Devon's rural and coastal communities. Therefore, this council's proposal sets out a 3-unitary model. The first is an urban-based unitary council based on the city of Exeter and 49 surrounding parishes. The second is an urban-focused unitary council based on the city of Plymouth and 13 adjacent parishes. And thirdly, a rural and coastal unitary council serving the rest of Devon. The proposed new unitary authority for Exeter and the surrounding area would serve a population of around 256,000, rising to around 294,000 by 2040. Of the 49 parishes, 15 are from the current Teignbridge District Council area, 28 from East Devon and 6 from Mid Devon. A reminder, Lord Mayor, that those 3 district councils will be abolished by April 2028, as will this council. Local government reorganisation will not change the role of parishes and town councils. Our final submission will propose to strengthen their role, as well as the relationship between parish councils and the proposed new authorities. I'd like to turn now to the financial case, Lord Mayor. I hope the members will note the transparency that officers have brought to this process. Independent analysis confirms that a unitary council based on Exeter and the surrounding area would be financially resilient. That means that on the key measures of population, resources and local taxation, it would have sufficient scale to withstand financial shocks, as would the other 2 proposed councils. There are, however, some risks that we will need to address as we develop the final submission. While the analysis confirms that the proposed new council would have sufficient income to be viable, it does not assess the costs of delivering services. The reason for this is that we have not yet reached the stage in the work that would allow us to do so. At the time of drafting this report, service cost information from other councils in Devon was not yet available, and in any event, we could not model these costs until we know the geography on which the proposed new council will deliver its services. Once we have completed the full assessment, we will share it with members, of course, along with the proposed models for delivering the key services, such as adult social care, children's services, and transport. So just to reassure members that the next time you hear from officers on this issue will not be at final submission stage. We would be intending to organise for briefings at significant points in the process. Lord Mayor, I'd like to turn to our work with other councils. As you know, the other 7 district councils in Devon continue to work on developing the 154 model, and Exeter is not part of that work, although we do continue to work with all Devon councils, for example, on a data sharing protocol and some limited resident engagement. We will continue to work with all Devon councils who wish to work with us to determine how we might reflect their proposals within ours, subject, of course, to a financial assessment and assessment of the other criteria. We already reflect Plymouth's proposal in our model, and we are keen to explore how Torbay's position might also be incorporated as we develop our final proposal. We're open to modifying the proposed boundaries, depending on what we hear from communities and any emerging advice that we might receive from government. To summarise, Lord Mayor, this is not just a technical exercise in redrawing boundaries. It is a chance to create a whole new model of local government, one that works better for everyone across Exeter and Devon. Members' confirmation of the proposed geography tonight will allow us to take a practical step forward. It allows us to start engaging with communities, refining our financial and service models, and building a submission that reflects the strengths and the needs of the whole county. We have an opportunity to help design a future council that is even more responsive, more resilient, and more connected to the people it serves. Lord Mayor, just before I conclude, I would like to thank my colleagues who are continuing to work diligently and thoughtfully to develop the council submission. I commend the report to members, Lord Mayor, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Anyone who has any questions, we will now take those. Councillor Bennett.
The Chief Executive has just obviously highlighted that there are risks that have been recognised regarding the council's or the proposed new council's geography, and has stated that it's regarding the delivery of social care, adult social care, children's services and SEND services. And you've explained that you haven't made any assessment on the costs of providing these services. Are they the main risks that have been highlighted, or are there any other risks that we really need to know as councillors now, rather than, you know, having a surprise closer to the deadline of the 28th of November?
Councillor Parkhouse.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is about the three distinct areas. The area in blue that's the rest of Devon, I'm just curious about how that became one area and the thinking behind that, given that I think if it went ahead, it would be a rather large unitary. And obviously that would then impact the other two areas. So yeah, I'm just curious about that process. Thank you.
Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question actually follows on from Councillor Parkhouse about the current geography, and how I just wanted to ask about the engagement process and thinking about. I was really reassured to hear the leader talk about the fact that you will be open, the council's open to adapt and change the plans based on those conversations. It was really clear in our online session earlier in the month that it's not a consultation process, but an engagement process, and that really made sense. I understood that. But very reassured around the fact that the leader did mention that absolutely as a council we're open to adapting the plans based on those engagement conversations. But I wanted to ask whether, as well as feedback to us, whether also there can be whether there would be feedback to those communities themselves as well, that engagement process has been with. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Councillor Harding.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've got two questions, if I may, please. The first one was about what happens to parish councils. I'm not sure whether that's changed in some of the conversations that the briefings we've had, but yeah, whether parish councils remain now or whether they disappear. And the other one was kind of follows on from Councillor Rees's point about the community engagement. That I think, can we make sure that the engagement is proactive, that we're actually going out there rather than just saying, well, here's a, and I think this is going to happen, but rather than just having a website that if people want to do it, we're actually going out and getting people's opinions, so that when these final proposals go through, nobody says, well, I didn't know anything about this, I think this was happening, that everybody's very much been part of it. Thank you very much.
Councillor Bennett.
Sorry, thank you, Lord Mayor. This is my second question. We obviously know the council have been doing good work with social prescribing and leisure work in a preventative way. And I would be keen to ensure this sort of work would be continued by the new council. However, as a former nurse, I'm concerned that this is being equated to the critical support services offered by adult social care. And I would like to be reassured that the council are taking professional and qualified advice on how a new council in Exeter will be able to provide and run these services, which we obviously know are very challenging. Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. The proposal is largely based around the catchment of the River Exe, which is good news. We often see political boundaries drawn along natural and environmental boundaries, and this results in a situation that is harder to protect and promote nature. So currently the Exe is the dividing line between authorities, and Exeter City Council has a responsibility for a far longer stretch of the Exe, which extends beyond the political boundaries and a mile out to sea. And we have no responsibility currently for the foreshore along that river beyond our city boundaries. So this creates real problems trying to help improve the health of the river and be able to manage it and enable access for people. So one of the things that we'd like to know, with the precious river running through the heart of the proposed boundary, can we be assured that experts will be asked about the bioregional implications of the proposal to, and how we can work to improve the health of the liver. So we need to consider environmental factors.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question relates to engaging with young people, and I'm wondering if the Chief Executive and her team would be able to consider a way of facilitating engagement from young people who are under 18. I realise that young people may not necessarily have the insight to discuss the complexities of the geography or the politics, but they are in a position to be able to vote, some of the older teens, very soon, and these decisions are going to affect them too. So my question relates to whether we might consider schools' engagement and a way of making it young person friendly, but still ensuring their voice is heard. Thank you.
Councillor Kevin Mitchell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question revolves around the new council's relationship with Exeter, because quite rightly within the report, and it's already been referenced, we want to build a very good relationship with the town councils that still exist and the parish councils. However, under the government's current plans, no new council structure can be set up within the boundaries of Exeter. So how will the new council aim to ensure that communities within Exeter get the same level of devolution as the town councils and parishes?
Councillor Bold.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to focus on the idea of Exeter being the economic driver, or one of the two economic drivers of the county, and I think to make sure that the wider Devon area can benefit from that economic driving, whether or not it would be appropriate for our recommendations that go back to the government to include the all-party parliamentary committee's suggestion that local authorities should have rural enablers embedded into their funded into their officer structure, so that to make sure that rural areas can benefit from economic growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So there are no other questions. I'll invite the Chief Executive to respond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think I've captured all of them, but I think colleagues have been jotting away furiously. So if I've missed any, I'm sure they'll remind me. So firstly, to Councillor Bennett's questions, the risks of the cost of service development. So the risks that have been identified in the report is that we know, based on the money that will be available to the new council, it's been assessed as viable. What we haven't yet calculated is what is the model of service delivery that we'd be proposing to take forward, and what is the cost of that. So all of the Devon councils have very recently inputted all relevant data into a shared data hub that is being hosted by Plymouth City Council. So we will now, all councils have access to all councils' data. And from there, that will allow us to generate the cost models that we need to come back to members and give you the assurance that the risks that we've outlined have been addressed, obviously to what hopefully will be member satisfaction. So just to give you that assurance that our intention is absolutely not to surprise members at the 11th hour, and that's why I made reference to what's coming back to members, a key point. So for example, when we've developed a service model around adult social care or children's services, we will come and talk to members about what that looks like. And I'll pick up there the second question that you asked about taking professional advice. Absolutely. What we will be able to understand is how it's being delivered at the moment, across the county. And then we'll be looking, as described in the report, for a model which focuses on real locality, so being able to deliver services as close as possible to where people are and providers are. We will, of course, look at all models out there. There are models of shared services. There's lots of things that we would want to explore. But just to assure you, absolutely, we'll be taking professional advice on those services that we currently do not provide as a district council, so it can't be expected to have the degree of knowledge that you would expect. So absolutely, we are commissioning that. And to your related point about prevention, absolutely. So the focus that we want to take is absolutely building on an approach that public services have been trying to take, I think, for decades, which is around prevention, because everyone recognises that it's easier to focus on prevention in terms of outcomes for the individual than it is with dealing with issues once they occur. So we would absolutely want to work in that space around things like Wellbeing Exeter, which I think is what you're referring to, and developing that as a model in our case. So I hope that answers your question. Councillor Parkhouse, in the 3-district model. So as the report outlines, the idea behind that is that we recognise the role of Exeter and Plymouth as drivers of growth, both for their cities, but the surrounding areas and the rest of the county. And the approach suggests then that at the moment, our thinking is that the rest of Devon is united because of the issues that they're addressing for their communities, so rural and coastal issues. I think I said that we will continue to work with Torbay Council to understand, because at the moment they're exploring a number of opportunities, I think, that they've set out publicly, and where we can, we would want to try and accommodate other councils' proposals within ours, it all being subject to financial assessment. So I hope that answers your question. Councillor Rees, your question was about the engagement process. Absolutely. So we are undertaking an engagement process. I won't jump onto that. I'll pick up Councillor Harding's point if I can at the same time. So absolutely, we're being proactive. We have already scheduled 3 webinars for the affected parish councils to attend if they're minded to. We're running one in the morning, one in the evening, one on the weekend to try and make sure that it is as accessible as possible. However, we don't want to sit in the Civic Centre and on broadcast mode. So we will absolutely be trying where we can to get out to parish councils who would like us to come out and speak to them, as we would for any areas of Exeter that want to invite us along to listen to us outline our plans and to absolutely give us the opportunity to listen to those issues that are important to them. So as a starter for 10, we're doing the webinars, we're doing a resident survey, both within the city, within the surrounding areas, and on top of the resident survey that we'll be hosting on the council's website, we're doing some professional market research to ensure that what we gather absolutely reflects the demographics of both the city and the surrounding area. So we're trying to absolutely be as all-encompassing as we can within a 6-week window. And I think, my own concern would be the practical ability for us to get out as much as we would like, but we certainly will be giving it a really good go. So just to give members that assurance, and absolutely our intention would be, once that we've gathered all the feedback from anyone who would like to share their thoughts with us, we will absolutely not only feed that back to members, but make that publicly available as we would in line with our consultation charter. So, and I think that the last part of your question, so we will obviously listen and understand people's thoughts about what the proposed new council should be focusing on, what would be even better if in terms of their current experience, and where they have thoughts around the geography, we'll absolutely listen to that. The issue, and as I said, we want to keep it almost as a working draft, but we just have to be mindful that whatever we propose finally still has to meet the criteria. So we will have to balance that as well, but we'd absolutely want to if we can incorporate those views. Councillor Harding, I think I said in my presentation, but it's certainly in the paper, the government has made clear that there's no change to the parish council structure, so parish councils will absolutely remain. And our intention, as I think I've said, was to try and understand in our conversations with the parish councils what works at the moment in terms of your relationship with your district council. How would you want to do that differently in terms of the proposed new council? So what would you really want to keep in place, and what would you perhaps want to see done even better? Okay. Councillor Moore, your question was about, I think, whether we were going to focus in our consultation on thoughts about preserving the health of the River Exe.
So it was about what professional advice you're going to take as part of this exercise to be able to improve the health of the Exe.
So we will certainly make sure that we build that in, just to give you that assurance. Okay. Councillor Hughes, question about whether we can engage with young people. I know absolutely as part of the consultation and engagement work generally the council is trying to do, we are really thoughtful about how important it is to hear the voice of young people. So absolutely in this exercise, we will try and do that. The challenge, of course, at the minute is that we're in summer holidays, so some of the schools will be away, but leave that with us. We will absolutely look to see what we can do. Councillor Kevin Mitchell, the new council's relationship with the city of Exeter. So you're absolutely right. The government's expectation is that existing parish councils stay as they are and no new parish councils will be developed. In the original white paper, there was an expectation about reflecting local voices. That was further amplified when we got the response to our submission, where there was a concept introduced about neighbourhood committees, neighbourhood forum. So what we would want to do is recognising absolutely the possible void, if you like, for an official way of hearing the voice of people in Exeter. Part of what we'll be thinking about in the next stage is about how might we pilot some of that work within the city of Exeter to ensure that residents can continue to have their voices heard as they do currently. And finally, Councillor Pole's question was, I think, recognising Exeter and Plymouth's role as economic drivers, and a question about how we can try and ensure that rural issues are considered, or how the benefits of that growth are translated to rural areas.
Yeah, about the recommendation of the all-party parliamentary committee that rural enablers should be embedded in local authorities in order to make sure that economic growth reaches rural areas.
So in the next stage, absolutely happy to look at that, Councillor Pole. Lord Mayor, I believe, I'm looking at my colleagues, that's answered all of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. We'll now move to the debate. Leader, did you have anything else you wanted to say? And at the end, and do you wish to reserve your right to speak? Thank you. Councillor Michael Mitchell, Councillor Zoe Hughes, and then Councillor Zoe Hughes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I should point out, especially for any of our colleagues who are listening online, I do have a dispensation to speak this evening. As a county councillor, I have to be careful what I say in one chamber as against another, but I do assure the people here I will make the identical speech in that chamber as well. I welcome this report and wish to thank all those who contributed to its contents. This is a start of a journey. The destination is still unclear. But on one point, there is clarity. The City of Exeter will form a major component of a new unitary authority if the government pursues this local government agenda reform. There is still much work to do and data to be collected and analysed. As well as engaging with those directly linked to the Exeter UA proposal, there is a need for all those across Devon who hold political power to try to come together and to seek an agreed submission to government on behalf of the entire population of Devon. We don't want to leave it to a lottery decided by the minister at the end of the day for 1.2 million people in Devon. We've already read on social media, or sometimes looked at the pictures, I see, for those who oppose the Exeter proposals. But what we don't hear is a clarity of what they propose as an alternative. Where are their detailed proposals? We're the first in the race. I would say, are even more advanced than the city of Plymouth. Change is coming. And if you live close to Exeter, you'll be linked to Exeter as the government wishes to see new UAs of about 350,000 population. That's not a takeover bid, that's a matter of fact of life, of where you live in proximity to Exeter. There are some points of concern that hopefully will be resolved either in our final submission or by government decision. Firstly, my colleague has already mentioned, Councillor Mitchell, there is, I believe, a need for a lower tier of local government within the area of the city of Exeter. We have to try to change the government's mind through our parties on the establishment of new town and parish councils. Others within, let's just look at this as an example. Others within the new UA will pay council tax to the UA, Exeter UA, and to their town or parish councils for their services, whilst those in Exeter won't. So residents in Exmouth, for example, if it was attached to Exeter, will be paying for their own local services and are also expected to contribute to the same services for the people of Exeter. These are not linked to the basic points of local accountability and democracy. That's yet another reason why we must continue to get the government to change their mind on new town and parish councils. Because it already affects Torquay and Paignton in the Torbay UA, but Brixham does, Torquay and Paignton don't. I hope we can gain clarity as to the position of the Torbay UA going forward. They have a strong case as an existing UA with a larger population than Exeter to do an Exeter or Plymouth and wish to enlarge and remain a standalone UA, thereby reinventing a new form of the 154 formula, leaving Exeter at the centre of a large Devon UA, as we are proposing effectively to do to them. There's also a danger that if there is internal disagreement within Devon, that the answer is to stay almost as we are. If it isn't broken, why fix it? The concept of a one Devon approach. We know existing counties cannot remain intact as new UAs, but if the Plymouth solution is accepted, you could have a new Devon based upon Torbay included. Or if Torbay goes alone, you could end up with a new Devon based centred on Exeter. These things we have opposed from the start because of size and locality. This reorganisation is being imposed upon us. We did not request it. We've got, I think, better things to do with our time and income in Exeter. It's really a centralisation process. It's not devolution. But hopefully, as a council, we won't automatically buy in to this big is best concept that is being pushed with the new unitaries. If I had a choice between localism and bigism, I'd go for localism. If I had to choose between local service delivery and bigism, I would go for local service delivery, hence my concern about the potential of a single UA for a large, vast area of Devon. Local government, and the clue is in the title. To me, it's about service to and for local communities, accountability linked to democracy. If bigness is the sole criterion, it doesn't work for me. I'm one of the few around who was an elected councillor involved in 1973, the last time this was discussed, a two-tier. I don't know how many are, but I'll find out soon. They'll all come out of the woodwork. 1973, when they had the two-tier reorganisation in Devon. What we tend to forget, of course, when Exeter ceased to be a unitary authority, in fact, and was demoted to a district council. We have been there as a city before. It was taken from us. My favourite position is the organisational structure of the then new Devon County Council, an area set up based on offices in Exeter, Plymouth, Torquay and Barnstaple. But my change would be they should all be unitary authorities, not area offices. working collaboratively, ensuring wherever you live in Devon, the standard of service you receive, especially in regard to children's and adult services, depends upon your needs, not where you live in Devon. Locality of government supports democracy and public participation. Working together supports the delivery of the highest possible standard of service. I will be supporting this recommendation this evening, allowing us to move on to the next stage of our journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes, and then Councillor Parkhouse.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, I would like to say a huge thank you to the leader, the chief executive, and the strategic teams at the council for the amount of work that has gone into this. At every step, the chief executive and her team have answered councillors' many questions, and in my opinion, have remained open-minded and clear-minded throughout the process thus far. As Councillor Michael Mitchell states, change is coming, whether we like it or not. The current proposal, in my view, makes the best possible job of the demands placed on us from central government. I do have reservations about SEND provision, naturally. However, on a smaller scale than the current Devon County Council geography, I think we have a real chance to do a far better job than what SEND children and their families have had to put up with for the last few decades. So ultimately, we have to do something, and I think that the chief executive and her team have done the best possible job they could with the timescales and information that they had. So, thank you.
Councillor Parkhouse.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to speak in support of the report. I think it marks a bold and forward-thinking step for Exeter and the wider region. It's not just a reshaping of boundaries, but it seems like it's a reshaping of opportunity. First and foremost, it recognises our unique role as a thriving urban hub. We're a city of innovation, education, culture, connectivity, and by establishing a dedicated unitary authority, we can harness these strengths to deliver services that are more responsive, more local, and more attuned to the needs of our residents. The financial analysis conducted by Pixel Financial Management gives us a good basis, and I'm happy to hear that it's going to be, that future work will continue on the financial analysis, because I think it's obviously a really important piece of the puzzle. It shows that, but it's good that it's showing at the moment that it's financially resilient, and that it's, importantly, it's also sustainable. Because this shouldn't be just about cost saving, but about smarter spending, better outcomes, and future-proofing our governance. I'm really happy to see that we've thought very broadly about which parishes to include, and that I believe that the 49 parishes that we've proposed, many of which are already economically and socially linked to Exeter. So this is just a recognition of the real world connections that exist, but beyond the lines that administrations might draw. I'd also like to flag that it's aligned with the government criteria and Exeter's own 6 principles: growth, accessibility, community, inequality, demographics, and financial viability. These aren't just buzzwords, these are the foundation of a fairer, greener, and more prosperous future. And finally, I'm really happy to hear about the democratic strength of the process, that we've got a robust programme of public engagement, that residents and stakeholders will have a voice in shaping the final proposal, and I'm particularly heartened by the question from Councillor Hughes in the answer about consulting with young people, especially given the government's proposed lowering of the voting age. So this is all just shows localism in action. So this is our chance to lead, to create a governance model that reflects the dynamism of our city and the aspirations of our people. So let's seize it and hopefully tonight secure unanimous support so we can take the next steps in this exciting process. Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would like to join with thanks to the Chief Executive for all your hard work. There's a lot of work behind the relatively short report. Thank you I also recognise the leader has put a lot of energy into progressing this. I will thank you too. You can record that in a minute. I know that with 11 other authorities and 10 other leaders and about 18 different proposals at the last count, it's not an easy job. So I do have sympathy, but it's going to get harder. And so I'm asking you to carry on and to be brave about listening and willing to take on feedback from the engagement. And as my colleague has said, that this is a process imposed by government. And what I believe and hope, and I share your opinion, that a unitary authority will be better for Exeter. It is a big and costly exercise. And we still have to do the day job of running the council. But there are a couple of opportunities which I welcome, and I've already mentioned the environment. It is good if we are able to operate on a wider land and water scale for the benefit of our landscape, environment, and the other creatures that live here. That's really important to residents too. I think there's another chink of good news, and my colleague has touched on it a bit, but I'm going to challenge us. I think we can go further. The government's guidance letter said new unitary structures should enable middle-aged eyes. New unitary structures should enable stronger community engagement and deliver genuine opportunity for neighbourhood empowerment. A lot is being made about talking to residents and organisations in the affected areas, implying outside of Exeter, and this is welcome, as were the comments from both the leader and the chief executive to the commitment to engage with them. Parish councils are the frontline voice of very local democracy, and really important. And as it has been pointed out in Exeter, we have no parish councils, we have no community councils, and we don't have a town council. So we must work just as hard to engage with communities in the current Exeter area. We cannot ignore distinct cultural and geographic communities. As the city has grown and changed, people need to and want to feel part of the city. Some don't. It is more than boundaries. So there's an opportunity to be brave and actually to reset the council's relationship with our communities, our citizens, not customers, our citizens, in how services are designed, delivered and accounted for how we work alongside our communities to build capacity and improve democracy for the benefit of the city. So we need to be open about our democracy and what that will look like. We don't need to create a great big donut with a great big deficit in the middle, a democratic deficit, which is in the centre in the former Exeter area. So asking residents about their views, the pros and cons of frontline democracy must be part of that transition process to a new authority. I note the comments about neighbourhood committees, but neighbourhood committees don't have any basis in legislation. Parish councils, community councils and town councils have a legal basis for operating. They have legal powers. They play a really important role and invaluable role in caring for parks, play equipment, allotments and community buildings, among other things. Many of the other things that might be overlooked as a new, larger and complex council is created. Attention to detail is what our communities demand of us. So I would like to challenge my colleague, I'm afraid, Councillor Mitchell, I would suggest we don't have to wait for government to give us permission to ask our communities what we want. We can undertake a community governance review as part of the transition period, the new authority to say, yes, this is what local democracy may look like as part and partnership of the new unitary authority. We don't have to wait for government. We should be saying actively to our community, what do you want? How would it work? What will your voice look like? And so I mentioned community buildings, and so I'm going to indulge me in carrying on and just talking about that because they're really important to our communities. I was really concerned when I read the government's invitation letter because it suggests that the costs of transitioning to the unitary authority, which isn't going to be cheap, can be met by capital receipts. So the sale of buildings, whether they're community or commercial, or the sale of open spaces. And I certainly hope that the sale of allotments is not going to be on the agenda. And I really don't want to see a fire sale of buildings. We don't want buildings to be pushed off to auction or seeking deals as soon as possible. We really need to be asking hard questions about what value communities and assets can play for our communities as community assets and community infrastructure. And we need to be able to have a transparent process to enable community organisations or perhaps even future parish councils to be able to take them on and to invest in them as community infrastructure and help meet local needs. Are we brave enough as a council to do that? I would also like to know, because it's sort of been brought up today, and I think we would share the same view in terms of models of delivery. I think it's important to set out your assumption here about how you see that model of delivery. I'm assuming that you would not be supporting an outsourced model. And actually, I think we would be agreed that actually we would like to see as many services as possible delivered by the council or in partnership with the community. So, given the start of the women's lobby, I think it's a parallel has come to mind in terms of negotiations between the leaders and the councils, perhaps, as that will continue, both will continue into the autumn. So apparently there's a rugby term, and we don't need you to be an enforcer. That's sort of a legal team, because it's really not, as this process has been identified, about which council comes out on top. And it is really about collaboration. So I welcome the approach that has been set out. And in addition to the updates that have been provided to councils, I think it would be really important is to provide updates to our communities about where we are in our deliberations on these issues. I do share the concern that my colleague has that if we don't cooperate, we will end up being divided up by Whitehall. And actually, so I really urge people to contribute to this process, and I will be supporting this because I think it's really important that we pull together and work this out between us. Thank you.
Councillor Williams and then Councillor Cookson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think we're all probably very convinced by the enormous effort that has been put in to this by the Chief Executive, officers, and also the leader of the council. Huge effort. And the one word that I've been put to the post on using it, that's shouting out at me, is localism. So you have to ask, where's the localism in the 5-4 bit, the 154 model? Where's the localism in the one Devon model? It's not there. We all know as city councillors, you know, some of the key issues on the doorstep, potholes, sand, weeds on the highway. And we have to say to our residents, sorry, you know, we cannot help, but we know hopefully somebody that can. And it's to do with a model of support that is distant from the people. So this is giving us huge opportunities to actually deliver services for residents with a local flavour. So it's really, really important that, as it's been said, that we do keep the discussions and the negotiations. But I do get a feeling from the other models, some of the other models, I should say, that it's a bit of a, you know, the back of the fact packet effort. They just haven't provided the information, the detail of how can they think that clumping 5 districts together and 4 districts together is going to work for those residents. No thought appears to be put into it at all, other than it's convenient against lumping district councils together. So I think we've got to actually have confidence and courage that we follow the work that's already been done and we support it. And I think I'm really reassured by the reassurance that's been given about how we are going to discuss these issues with residents that are in the proposed geographical area and listen to what they have to say to us. So I'm certainly going to be supporting this recommendation, and I would like to encourage officers and the leader to continue with all their energetic efforts to meet a successful conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cookson, then Councillor Pole.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Imagine a parent in Topsham whose child needs urgent social care support. They don't know whether to call the county or the city, and by the time they find out, weeks have been lost. Or a resident living on New Court Road, staring at the same pothole every day for months, wondering if it's the city's job or the county's. This proposal is about fixing that confusion. It's about governance that works for Exeter. Right now, many of our city's priorities, transport, housing, social care, public health and leisure, are decided at Devon County Council, where Exeter is represented by just a handful of the 60 Devon councillors. That means our city's needs are constantly competing with the rural priorities. Important decisions get delayed or watered down, leaving residents frustrated and services less effective. A unitary authority would ensure decisions are made locally by people fully accountable to Exeter residents who understand the city's challenges and opportunities. Some would say creating a unitary is expensive and disruptive. Let's be honest. Yes, reorganisation has short-term costs, but the long-term picture is compelling. Evidence from other areas shows unitaries save money by removing duplication, whether these are the back office functions or IT systems, all of which are costly and inefficient sometimes. The government's 2016 Deloitte report on local government reform found that such restructuring could generate up to 7% savings annually. For Exeter, that's millions of pounds a year, money that could repair roads, support youth services, and fund climate change projects. With careful planning, disruption can be minimised and savings reinvest for residents' benefit. Some argue Devon works fine. Why change it? If fine means our children's social care being rated inadequate for 4 years running, if fine means roads unrepaired and youth services being cut, then we must set our sights higher. Recent Ofsted inspections have rated Devon County Council child social care as inadequate in 4 areas and requiring improvement in another. Exactly the same as in 2020. As a school governor, I have heard the frustration from parents, students and teachers on how they have been failed. That's not an isolated failure only in my school. It's a symptom of a large county system struggling to deliver consistent services across the vast and diverse area. Smaller, locally focused councils often outperform larger counties in adult social care, housing and preventative services. Why? Because leaders are close to their communities. They see the impact of every case. They act quickly and make decisions based on local knowledge. They can integrate housing, leisure and public health to reduce demand on social care, preventing problems before they escalate. Representation matters too. When governance is too remote, residents lose their voice. In Gloucestershire, for example, hundreds of parish and town council seats are unfulfilled, leaving communities unrepresented. Exeter Labour councillors focus on their residents full time. Some opposition councillors, however, seem to collect councillor positions like Pokemon cards. It's hard for residents to know which hat they're wearing. Collecting titles may be fun, but it leaves potholes unrepaired, youth services unsupported, and climate action delayed. Exeter is ready for this. Our population exceeds 130,000. Our economy generates over 5 billion annually. We are the economic engine of Devon. Comparable cities like Bath and North East Somerset have run successfully as unitary authorities for decades. Exeter's case for unitary authority isn't just strong, it's responsible. Our bid uniquely demonstrates, unlike some of the other alternatives proposed. In our proposal, the neighbouring authorities will remain financially resilient and fully capable of supporting their residents. This isn't a plan that leaves anyone behind. And I want to take a moment to thank the officers of Exeter City Council for developing this bid objectively with due consideration for all the people of Devon. They have approached this not with political bias, but with a clear focus on what works best for every community in Devon. Some also worry that the towns and villages in our proposal will lose their identity if Exeter becomes a unitary authority. In fact, the opposite is true. These communities already have a strong link to Exeter. Their place of work, their schools and colleges, their shopping, their health services, their place of worship. And I have seen these connections firsthand. These communities don't lose their identity by working with Exeter. They strengthen it, and we strengthen each other. A unitary Exeter won't erase that identity, it will strengthen it. Small councils are also better at prevention and early intervention. By integrating housing, leisure, public health, we can reduce demand for high-cost social care. But back to my final point. Right now, residents often don't know who to approach. Roads, housing, social care, responsibility is split between the county and the city. So they come to their hard-working city councillors, and we all do our best. But too often we have to go hand in hand to county councillors, who we know move at the speed of a Devon pothole repair. Slow, patchy, and only if you're lucky. Then when you do find your county councillor, they're too busy, often reporting each other to the police or writing letters with imaginary signatories. A unitary council solves that problem. One council, one point of accountability, making decisions and answering directly to the people of Exeter. So now, if you have the courage to picture it, imagine a unitary authority where roads are repaired without months of wrangling. Youth centres reopen instead of being closed, where climate projects move forward without being blocked by rural politics, where residents know exactly who to call and get a straight answer. We have the population, the resources, the leadership to govern ourselves, and we owe it to our residents to take this step. Thank you.
Councillor Poll and then Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wanted to make a brief comment about the speeches we've heard about parish councils and whether Exeter needs one of these. Rural wards are characterised by large geographies and small and heterogeneous populations, known as parishes, and each one of these may contain many villages themselves, sometimes dozens of them within a single ward. And so I think it does make sense for each of those to be able to discuss the fine detail of their sort of hyper-local issues and make recommendations to their higher tier elected representatives, which is often the outcome of the deliberations that parish councils make. Whereas the cathedral city of Exeter, which is technically actually a large town, is by its nature a relatively homogeneous geography with an interconnected large population and fewer differentiated geographies for councillors to engage with within each ward. So my sense and feeling is that by establishing a parish council in Exeter, it would be an alternative decision-making structure that would represent a layer of bureaucracy and local taxpayer expense that would undermine a lot of the benefits of reform by which the government plans to deliver the joined-up decision-making that residents want, avoiding the confusion about roles and responsibilities that residents currently find so frustrating in the two-tier model. Thank you.
Councillor Wright, then Councillor Fold.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. A lot has been said already by those more eloquent than me. I would just like to thank the Pokemon Prince opposite me for speaking in a very informed, as ever, way.
with your experience, which goes right back to the actual forming, the dark ages, as we know. Again, want to echo thanks to the chief executive and the officers for their work that they put into this, and of course the leader as well, and this report itself, which is accessible and easy to understand, particularly the RAG rating on page 12. So this to me is just a quick overview. We want everything to be green on that RAG rating. There's nothing red, which is a really good sign. Not politically, financially, it's a good sign. The areas that are amber, we've already had explained to us, there's more work to do to get that data, and hopefully when that data comes through, things will come up to green. Balanced population size and demographics that won't become green as becoming completely compliant with what the government has asked for originally, but we do know that that original population size has now sort of been amended, and this is a viable size and quite likely to get through. The bits that I'm really pleased about, that we all are, I'm sure, and it's highlighted on that page, is the priority to prioritise the delivery of high quality and sustainable public services to citizens. This, Lord Mayor, is what it is all about. This is the whole driver behind devolution, is that we know, as we have heard, that being part of a two-tier council has so many drawbacks, so many barriers to actually being able to spend money in the best way, in the wisest way, and quickly to make it go to the people where we know it needs to go, and the services where we know it needs to go as a local authority. Making the local authority bigger isn't just expanding Exeter. That isn't it. This isn't about Exeter swallowing up surrounding areas, despite some of the media headlines that way, because it's good to capture attention. Nobody's being swallowed up by this. It's obvious areas of people where their kids, you may live in Crediton, but your kids will be coming into Exeter to Exeter College. You may live in Exeter, but your kids might be going to Crediton Community College. You might be working, shopping, travelling, being educated in that area, that donut, as it's been called. So already we have a connection locally across this actual demographic and this geographical area. So it makes so much sense. I'd like to just quote DCN, that's in the report as well, about local connection is a preventative superpower. I think that a unitary of this size stands so much more chance of being a superpower for our residents, for our kids that need that same provision and have been waiting for it for too many years, because the local need, the local areas where these children are going to school, the local schools, that information not always known at a higher level when there's too broad an area to deal with. Adult social care, the same. The roads, the potholes, the transport system, all of it. Within that donut, that geographical area, there are people that are already connected by knowing what we need for this area, what we need to be able to do to make things better for everybody in the area, and that is precisely what is driving this proposal. So thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and thank you to the leader and the chief exec.
Councillor Fole and then Councillor Kevin Mitchell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can I firstly, like all the other speakers, thank the chief executive, the officers, and indeed the leader for the incredible amount of hard work they put in so far. Secondly, I'd like to try a bit of one-upmanship on Councillor Mike Mitchell and say, when I was a councillor in 1969 in Plymouth, albeit Plymouth City Council Youth, Plymouth was unitary authority as such. Lost that status in the mid-70s. And it's important we learn from our history. As you said, Mike, at one point, Exeter was. 12 years ago, 13 years ago, we were that close again. Now, I've spent 40 years in the area as a teacher, a head teacher, governor, and it's criminal what's happened to SEND. It's criminal what's happened to children's services. It is criminal what's happened with the funding for Devon being one of the lowest in the whole country. My 96-year-old mother's recently gone into a care home. It's a bit criminal, some of the things I see in adult support as well for the elderly. We can do a better job. You only get normally a once in a generation opportunity. We've got twice a generation opportunity. Let's not waste it this time. Let's grab it. Let's support this. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Kevin Mitchell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Chief Exec and also thank her for her response to my initial question. As I stated in that question, I'm reassured that our relationship with the town councils that are included in this map and also the parishes will be enhanced by this proposal. And that's something that we have to make very clear to them when we go out and see them and meet with them, that we want that relationship. However, like my other colleagues, I do still have a concern about Exeter within this unitary and those neighbourhoods. Alphington, Pinhole, Heaventree, Whipton, Topsham are all uniquely different communities within the city of Exeter. If you tell the people of Topsham that they're the same as someone in St Leonard's, believe me, they would be up in arms because it's distinctly different. Within my own ward, St James is distinctly different to Dayard. So therefore, what we do need, and Councillor Moore reflected on this, in my view, is a selection of neighbourhood councils across the whole city of Exeter. So we don't have that void, we don't have that disparity between Crediton, Dawlish and Exmouth to Exeter. So I just hope that's taken forward. I will be supporting this tonight. I've been a long advocate of unitary status, as everyone knows. I supported it in the previous bid, and I'll continue to support it. But please do take those concerns on in the future when we move this process forward.
Thank you. I've seen no other hands, so I now invite the leader to sum up and report.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you to all the members. I think it's been a good discussion, a good debate, and I can sense the interest, the passion, and to a degree, excitement that we can achieve something here in and around Exeter. And I'm hoping that we can maintain a unanimous support for this. Councillor Mitchell, I thank him for giving us the insight to his speech at the forthcoming County Council. And I've lost some money on what he said. He mentioned the 1974 reorganisation, and I thought he was going to mention the name of the people who brought it forward, but he failed to do so. But that is important, and we shouldn't replicate those mistakes, because that was when Exeter lost its, what was then, unitary authority. We had the City of Exeter Transport Department. We ran our own buses here in Exeter, I have to say. We ran our own education here in Exeter. We ran the gasworks at one stage. Can you imagine the planning application for that thing when it came up all those years ago? So you can imagine that we're a proud city. But you know, what does concern me is the uninformed remarks that come over about the power grab, which I mentioned earlier. And actually, when you think about some of the discussion Councillor Mitchell, Kevin Mitchell has mentioned, about the deficit of the city council in comparing the rural areas will be a slightly bit more governance-wise better than us. So I can assure them, as I will, and I know Councillor Moore also sits on some LGA committees. I mean, they've all been shook up now. And there is still opportunity for us to try to influence these things. But on the question of governance, we first of all got to get past the 28th of November. I can't really ask the officers to go into detailed stuff on all of that at this moment in time. We've got to get the bid in, we've got to get it. It will be one of those things that I think we would be happy to discuss once we've got it, because then we've got it, haven't we? But it does need addressing, so I think that's important. And something which I think some of us, when we're mentioning to people who talk to us from outside Lord Mayor, is I would say, the electoral deficit, the democratic deficit at this moment in time. Because I know I've lived in a lot of places in Exeter. I was born and brought up in a village outside of Exeter called Whitstone. Well, what did I do? I grew up in Whitstone. I went to school in Exeter. I went shopping in Exeter. I played in Exeter, and I ended up getting a job in Exeter. But do you know what? If I stayed in Whitstone, I couldn't afford to, but if I could have stayed in it, do you know what? I would have had no vote. No vote whatsoever. And that's what I would say to residents in the 49 parishes. You do come into Exeter from time to time. You do indulge it. You shop here, you play here, you work here. Here's your chance to have a vote now on what goes on. You know, you don't have to send me an email telling me you don't like the high street. You can actually vote to do something about it. So I think that democratic deficit is important. The environment, and Councillor Moore and her party is quite right to keep stressing that we shouldn't take the eye off the ball, and we won't. But I've got to say, on all these issues, our main aim is to get over, can I use the rugby term, we've got to get the ball over the line. We've got to get the ball over the line, and then we can do high fives on all these things, all right? But that's the important thing. One thing I will go back a bit further than you, Councillor Mitchell. In 1953, if you look in the planning office, there's a map of Exeter as it was in 1953, all right? And what you will see, Alphington, Topsham and Pinhole was not part of the city, not part of the city. So this is an evolution, is what's going on. It is an evolution that is going on. Those communities will stay the same. They will have all their, you know, the local plan. I look at the planning, we will hopefully have a local plan by the time this comes in for Exeter. I'm assuming we would adopt the local plans for those parts until that next council decides. So on governance, I mentioned the governance, but Councillor Moore is right. I will not be suggesting that there's a fire sale. I don't know who's going to be running the new authority. It's going to be quite a different dynamic, It won't be for us here in Exeter to dictate all its policies. It will emerge. All those communities around Exeter, together with members from here, will decide the direction. If my party is involved, I can assure you, we will not want to hive off services. We will want to be them. So that's important. And I just want to end, Lord Mayor, by just addressing some of the issues around the financial modelling that will be going on. And I was quite pleased to hear about everybody's talking about big isn't beautiful necessarily, and some of the problems that we've had with those key areas. So should we be lucky enough to get unitary status based upon this or something similar to after the engagement, I don't believe for one moment it would be that new council's intention to carry on the way the county council carried on. We would want to do it a different way. We would look at a lot of different ways of delivering those services. That's what we would need to do. And I'm confident that we will be able to get those confident brains around the table, that new authority will be able to get those people around the table to make sure that we can have some deliverable services. And so I think it's very, very important, Lord Mayor. And the only sad thing that I have about it all is that transport will go up to a strategic mayor, because I would have just loved a new unitary authority to have taken over the buses here in Exeter. But that may not happen. It will have to be up to the mayor of the strategic authority to deal with that. But I think the people in and around Exeter will, I think, benefit from it. Nothing will change for them. And one person did email me and said, I don't want to be in Exeter. And I emailed that person and I said, we will not be moving you back into Exeter. I mean, so, you know, I mean, do you understand? There's such a lot of fear out there. But I think we've got a good team here. I really thank everybody in the chamber tonight, Lord Mayor. It's been a good debate. I know it's gone on for a good hour and a half, nearly. But you know what? This is the biggest change to local government in the city for over 50 years. And if we just passed it all off and then went home very quickly, I don't think people watching us would have done the job. And I do know that there may be some other councillors from other districts watching and listening, and I do hope they see that we are coming at this from a collegiate point of view. And I must say, I've been approached quite rightly. People say, well, what will be happening to Torridge in North Devon? Well, Torridge and North Devon may be bringing some proposals. That's what they do. Torby, we're waiting on them to have discussions. And then what the chief executive and myself are saying, we're happy to chat to anybody about any of the proposals to try to have one common proposal representing Devon. But the minister knows full well that that may not happen. And so therefore we need to have the best possible option for all of Devon, which would include Exeter, Lord Mayor. I do hope, Lord Mayor, that everybody will vote for this unanimously.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, members. I now move to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendations?
Yeah, don't want to expose.
Any against? Any abstentions?